Bet the Board.
What do you mean you don't bet? I mean, I don't bet. You know, I don't gamble. I don't. I never have, and I never will. Yeah, right. I'll bet you $20 I can get you gambling before the end of the day.
You owe me 15 grand, pal.
Pay him. Pay that man his money.
It's the Bet the Board podcast.
God likes me. He really, really likes me.
In the end, I wound up right back where I started. I could still pick winners, and I could still make money for all kinds of people back home. And why mess up a good thing?
Here's Payne Insider and Todd Furman.
Welcome into the Bet the Board podcast, powered by FanDuel. NFL Week 10. I am your host, Todd Furman, joined as always by my esteemed colleague and co-host, the one, the only Payne Insider. Payne, how goes it this fine Masters Thursday, my friend?
I'm going to be fully entrenched in this podcast now that the golf is in this weather delay. I was planned on having it on in the background while we recorded this, and fully engaged now. What's going on with the weather over there?
It doesn't look like Mother Nature is going to comply with our wishes to get the round played in its entirety, at least the way things stand now. But weirder things have happened. As we know, 2020 has taught us, prepare for the unpredictable and unprecedented. And let's hope this is the only soggy day at Augusta. But I have a feeling that's not quite going to be the case. Either way, it's going to be interesting to see a golf major unfold, especially on a course as steeped in tradition as this in November, rather than the traditional time in the calendar in April.
Yeah, it should be a fun Saturday and Sunday watching this unfold. It's going to be interesting. There's a lot of intrigue, obviously, with the tournament, but I feel like there's multiple guys that have a real legitimate shot to win it this year. And I know DJ seems to be the guy that had the most value atop the leaderboard, so it'll be interesting to see if he can pull it off and get this green jacket. Rooting for DJ in this one.
Should be interesting. There's no doubt he's had a ton of success at this course, just hasn't been able to break through. We'll see if Rory can complete the career Grand Slam amongst some of the others. And as we know, Bryson DeChambeau has taken an awful lot of attention, and I'm sure betting dollars will have to get John Sheeran's take. And curious to know which golfers may provide a little bit of liability for the folks at FanDuel, but more on that when we get to his interview later in the show. Payne, when
Rory brought the wife and kids. He's setting up for a big weekend, it seems.
You know, you want your support network there. When you have a chance to make history, you bring everybody there, those nearest and dearest to you. You're allowed to focus a little bit. And, you know, what's funny about him is you look at the odds board, and I know we're going off on a little bit of a golf tangent. No one talking about him as the favorite. So you wonder for the first time, when you're not commanding the headlines, if that's a little bit easier to take some of the pressure off and go, hey, everyone wants to talk about DJ. Everyone wants to talk about Bryson. I've seen Xander Schauffele widely thrown around as this being his breakthrough first major victory. Meanwhile, Rory goes, I haven't played well since the pandemic. What do I have to lose in this tournament?
Absolutely. I know that's a guy that, at least from a pool standpoint, and I think from a price standpoint, garnered the attention of a lot of professionals that, you know, in terms of a golfer in that tier 2-3 range, Rory was the guy that seemed to be the focal point of a lot of portfolios this week.
Always a little bit of the contrarian angle we know can pay dividends in terms of market perception and ultimately identifying value. And Payne, when you look over the NFL Week 10 schedule, a little bit unorthodox, and I think the Masters plays a big role in that you only have a handful of games with the early 1 a.m. Eastern kickoff. And unfortunately, of the 5 games, I don't think any of them cracked our rotation as far as big game breakdowns were concerned.
The 1 o'clock slate is bleak. That is for sure. I think the appointment television is probably Tampa, Carolina. See if Teddy Bridgewater and the Panthers can keep getting to the window as a dog, or if Tom Brady and that offense can get things going and bounce back here.
How dare you not get excited?
Don't have any 1 o'clock games on the slate.
How dare you not get excited for a first place showdown in the NFC East between the 3-4-1 Philadelphia Eagles and the robust 2-7 Giants, whose 2 wins this season have come against the Washington football team.
Robust. I like that. That's an interesting describing word there.
All right, should we get into the actual games and kick things off late afternoon?
Let's do it.
All right.
We're here for football.
All right, we are here for a little bit of football talk, and we'll see some of that unfold in the desert with Buffalo taking on Arizona. You're looking at the Arizona Cardinals, a 2-point home favorite at FanDuel. Total on the game, 56.5. The Arizona Cardinals had their modest 3-game winning streak snap last weekend at the hands of your beloved Miami Dolphins. When you look at Kyler Murray during his short career. 10-6 against the number in non-divisional games. This is Buffalo's best start on the other side to a season through the first 9 games since 1993, Payne. And the Bills, 4-0-2 against the number the last 6 times they've taken their show out on the road. I think the Bills' offense becomes the headliner in this game as they got back to basics. We saw the prolific passing offense on full display last week against the Seahawks. Will they keep the good times rolling against this Arizona Cardinals defense?
I think so. And you kind of pinpointed last week. I think it's another good situation for Josh Allen in the Bills' offense this week because you have a positive situation, not just with who you play, but you get the game indoors. And so we kind of hinted at this last week and really broke it down. They were in some negative situations the prior few weeks with these scheduling quirks and weather suppressing some of their output. I think we see a full-blown effort here again from the offense. This is a very gettable Cardinals defense. In my mind, a little overrated. And if you look at things on the surface, you're looking at Arizona right now, 10th in defensive efficiency. To me, though, when you actually break down some of these games, you see who they've played. One of the 8 easiest schedules of offenses. If you look at trending metrics, which is something I really start to use this time of season, put a little more weight into recent games than those played, 2 months ago. And if you really look, since the loss of Chandler Jones week 5, Arizona's 30th in rushing success rate defense, 22nd in passing success rate defense. With Chandler Jones in, top 12 in both categories weeks 1 through 5. This is also, to me, a major step up in class for the Cardinals defense. Arizona's played 2 offenses that are currently above average in offensive efficiency right now. Both Carolina and Seattle put up 31 or more points. So I don't think it bode well for Arizona's defense. Now, it does look like some help's on the way. Arizona activated Devin Kennard, who we mentioned on Monday was probably their highest graded player, I believe, to this point in the season. Byron Murphy is also back. Drake Kirkpatrick got in a limited practice on Wednesday, so we'll have to monitor that a little bit. And then the Cards go out and they sign Jonathan Joseph. Not sure what kind of impact he'll have this week, but at least some of those guys give Arizona's defense a fighting chance if they're available. The one matchup that I think we want to look for here, Todd, and I think, again, it probably bodes well for Buffalo's offense, is how Josh Allen has dealt with the blitz this season. That's going to be important in this game because we know Vance Joseph, the Cardinals defensive coordinator, he loves to send extra men. Blitzes on 40% of dropbacks, 5th highest rate in the league. The unfortunate part for Arizona is it seems like they don't really get pressure when they send the blitz, only a 22% pressure rate. So it leaves the secondary a little vulnerable, especially when Vance sends this blitz. But if you look at Josh Allen so far, completing 62% of his passes when blitzed. Last season, only 50%. Allen's averaging 7.3 yards per pass attempt when blitzed this season, 5.5 last year. This season, Josh Allen's passer rating is 39 points higher when blitzed. So I like what I'm seeing from Josh Allen. Obviously, he's mobile. He can evade some of the pressure. He's only been sacked on 4% of blitzes, but mostly it's because he's getting the ball out quicker. And I think more importantly, that maturation that we've seen from Josh Allen is he's now able to actually identify blitzes coming, and he's done a really good job audibling and setting up, receivers and running backs in some plus EV situations. If you look, some of these receiver screens, some of these hot routes, go back to last week, Seattle cuts the lead to 7. The Bills had a 3rd and 16 from the Seahawks 35, and you can tell Seattle's sending the house to knock Buffalo out of field goal range. Allen audibles to something they're calling gold rip, which is probably going to get changed this week, would be my guess. It's this receiver screen to John Brown, and he takes it down to the Seattle 2. So I think Josh Allen's handled the blitz really well. He'll have to do it again here because Vance Joseph is going to send some pressure here. Again, this just feels like a really solid spot for Brian Daboll's offense. Plus, Todd, it also looks like Buffalo's going to get their starting center back, Mitch Morse, this week.
Yeah, you mentioned the offensive line, and Cody Ford wasn't available for the full game against Seattle. Morse getting out of concussion protocol will help. And for as well as Allen played, throwing for more than 400 yards in the win against the Seahawks, he was hit 10 times and brought to the turf 7 times. Often that you produce those kind of numbers as a starting quarterback, you're going to take your team out of prime scoring positions. Thankfully for the Bills, the Seahawks defense negated a lot of that, and we've seen how much more prolific the passing game looks with John Brown out there. His speed can be a force to be contended with. And you mentioned Arizona. They've struggled in a variety of ways. How dare you, though, discount the revenge game for Jordan Phillips and the havoc he intends to wreak on the team that let him walk this past offseason?
He does seem to play better in revenge games, that I know. With him being a former Dolphin, he seemed to get a little extra excited when the Dolphins played Buffalo initially there, and now he's moved on to Arizona as well. I saw he missed practice yesterday. Is he going to be a full go for this game?
You know what? It's going to be anybody's guess. I would imagine he's a limited participant today, but we'll see. And obviously, as you've brought to my attention, Wednesday injury reports are one thing, Thursday and Friday much more indicative. I have to imagine if he's able to move at all, he's going to do everything he can to be out there. But I say that more facetiously than anything else. I know Sean McDermott did mention it and said we will be cognizant of where Jordan Phillips is on the football field.
he specifically said he seems to play a little bit better against his old teams.
Yep, he's well aware that of where he'll be. So interesting matchup to watch there. When we look at the other side of the ball, Arizona now boasts the league's number one overall offense, averaging more than 420 yards per game. Kyler Murray going out there and reinventing the position, kind of taking the Lamar Jackson mold from a season ago and raising the bar. You look at what Kyler's done this year, leads all quarterbacks with 543 rushing yards. 8 rushing touchdowns, tied with Cam Newton for the most among quarterbacks. Went for 100 yards against the Dolphins last week, his first career 100-yard rushing game. He's averaging more than 7 yards per carry, but more importantly, Kyler's not using his rushing game as a detriment to what they're doing in the passing game. He's only been sacked 7 times this season. We know he can't do it on his own, and Payne, against this Bills defense, it doesn't matter if by ground or by air, there's going to be plenty of opportunities for Arizona's offense to get on track.
Completely agree. And, you know, the last 2 weeks or so, we've really mentioned this suppression in Bills games, but most of it had to do with their offense. We really haven't, for some reason, applied it to the defense, but it's really been the inverse there. So I think people who do look at trending data and see like, Buffalo's gone from 22nd to 17th in defensive efficiency in recent weeks, that McDermott possibly has it heading in the right direction. Maybe. But for me, like being able to play in a weather game against Kansas City really had the Chiefs focusing on their ground game. Then you get to play the Jets and the Patriots offenses, 24th and 32nd most efficient offenses in the NFL. If you exclude the KC game because of that weather in the game plan that really forced Andy Reid to use, this ground and pound, plus it was a short week, Buffalo's defense has faced top 10 defenses in 3 other games this season. That's it. They've given up an average of 36 points in those 3 games. All 3 teams have scored 32 or more. So I don't see them trending in the right direction. Now I know Levi Wallace returned, I believe, in week 8. Josh Norman's back at practice, so maybe you do get some help in the secondary here moving forward. But you get another top 10 offense here in Arizona, indoors. And to me, the Cardinals are trending in the right direction. You hinted at Kyler Murray being really good recently. Completely agree, especially the way he's thrown the ball. Kyler was really, reliant on his legs the first month of the season, but now the legs are still a massive part of the game, but he's doing things in the pass game that are super efficient. I think across the board, the pass game has increased substantially, even with Hopkins, being limited to 3 catches last week. But if you break this down, again, you're going to hear us talk a lot about this week and moving forward, where we're starting to break down sectors of the season. And if you look at the first 4 weeks, just 46% of Kyler's passes graded successful, as 25th in the NFL. Since week 5, that number is a 54% passing success rate for Kyler, 4th best in the league over that stretch. And it's not just the down-to-down success that's increased the first 4 weeks, but if you're looking at explosiveness, 29th for Arizona the first month of the season. From week 5 onward, Cardinals are 5th in explosive pass rates. So they've really improved. If you look at where Buffalo has struggled the most defensively this season also, in terms of this specific matchup, it's 3 wide receiver sets. The Bills have given up a 104 passer rating, 8.3 yards per pass attempt from 3 wide sets. Buffalo's allowed 66% of runs to grade successful from that spread out look. The formation that Arizona uses the most is 3 wide receiver sets. It also appears like Kenyon Drake is trending towards playing this week. He returned to practice on Wednesday, so I think it should help a little bit for Arizona to maybe be a little more balanced in the relative sense here if they need to be. And listen, sometimes when I look at this one specifically, right, this game as a whole, I just think the matchup here for both offenses is very good. And I'm not saying anything that's shocking, but typically when you have matchups or a game where you potentially like the over, you're hoping that one team can score so the other team gets out of its shell. In a game like this, I don't think it matters. Like, both offenses can push and dictate the game flow, and that allows it to get moving back and forth where both teams are actually aggressive. You also have two quarterbacks that are extremely mobile. It's rare that you get a game that both defenses have to prepare for quarterbacks that can really use their legs, and it limits what you can do defensively. You can only do so many things when you have a mobile quarterback. And again, like I'm saying the obvious here, but when you're looking at the highest total on the board, I think some of this stuff is important to break down. And candidly, this wasn't the highest total on the board to start the week. There's a reason it's moved from 52 out to 56, 56 and a half, and blew through the key number of 55. And it's a lot of these matchups. It's a lot of the suppression that we've talked about. And so it doesn't shock me that this total got buried over. I think both of these offenses are going to have a lot of success here, Todd.
Yeah, there's no doubt that Kyler Murray's success over the last couple of games have definitely coincided with the emergence of Christian Kirk as a viable deep threat. We've seen DeAndre Hopkins' target share decline a little bit, and I think that's important, knowing that one of the key matchups out here will be Tre'Davious White against DeAndre Hopkins. Hopkins really struggled to try and find separation when the Bills took on the Texans in the playoffs last year. Did have that touchdown late, but we'll see if all the other pieces on that Arizona offense are able to find some success, as every team seemingly has been able to do against Buffalo's defense this season.
That's one thing, though. I will say this. Like, when you have an offense that's going like 3 and 4 wide, even if you have a shadow corner, there's a lot of guys that are going to be able to create opportunities in other areas. And I just think Cliff's a little bit more sophisticated than what Hopkins was working with in Houston last year. I think that's been well documented. And the other thing that we have to look for here, and I think Tre'Davious White is absolutely going to play in this game, but he exited with an ankle injury late in that game against Seattle. Was very limited yesterday in practice. I think he's absolutely going to play. I just don't know if he's going to be 100%. So that's one thing to factor here. But you're right. The emergence of Christian Kirk, I think, really helps the Cardinals offense in the pass game.
I feel like this podcast is going to have a distinctly NFC West focus, and it makes a ton of sense when you look at how this division has performed, the best in football from top to bottom. And a game, Payne, that'll go a long way in determining the pecking order is going to take place at SoFi Stadium, where the Rams will welcome in the Seattle Seahawks. And you're looking at the Rams, a 2-point favorite at FanDuel. Total in this game, 55.5. When you look at Seattle over the last couple of seasons, they've been great against most of the teams in the NFL. 20-6 in non-divisional games, but only 7-7 within the division over the last 3 seasons. The Rams are one of those teams that have really been a thorn in the Seahawks' side, going 4-1 against them in the 5 previous meetings. And in 5 of their 6 meetings, the Rams have scored at least 28 points since Sean McVay took over. The only time the Rams didn't score 28 against the Seahawks, that came way back in 2017, and a game that finished 16-10. When you look at the Rams coming in off the bye, Seattle has performed exceptionally well off a loss. And as an underdog, not quite sure where you wanted to start with this, if it's the Seattle offense and how they match up against the Aaron Donald-led Rams defense, or the other side of the ball where Jared Goff and that passing attack should be able to have plenty of success against the Seattle secondary on a record pace to set all sorts of negative numbers as it terms to how bad they've been from start to finish on the defensive side.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's start with the Rams offense. And to me, I think the bye week was a positive. And they had some ridiculous early season travels. And I'm also interested to see what Sean McVay comes up with here. And you kind of hit this, right? It's a division game. It's a familiar opponent. You would have to think there's going to be a curveball or two, at the very least, some tendency breakers with 2 weeks prep. When I started to dig into this game, I'll just be open and honest. Like I said to myself, this seems like a pretty good spot here for the Rams. Obviously, you'd like Seattle off a win potentially, but then you start to dig into some of the matchups. And because you mentioned some of the previous success the Rams have had offensively, they did some things a little bit different. I think they'll have some success here. But the Rams offense right now, it is built on the ground game. It's built on play action and boot action off of that ground game. And you're looking at the Rams, they're the 8th most run-heavy team in the NFL. When you look at this matchup, though, it's interesting because Seattle in this spot is the 9th most efficient run defense. In terms of success rate, Seattle's 5% better than league average against the run. And there are some rumors that the big fella there, defensive tackle Snacks Harrison, is going to get some snaps in this game.
He's big. He's big.
Did you... Now, we joked a little bit off air about this, and he's a defensive tackle, so he's supposed to be big, and his nickname is Snacks. But he came into Seattle camp. There's a reason he was on the practice squad, because he's a little out of shape. So he's probably going to see some snaps, going to be a little bit limited in that regard. The other thing that's interesting here is the running back, Darrell Henderson, hasn't practiced since the Dolphins game. So, is he going to play here? Just the matchup from that perspective of McVay needing the ground game to boost everything else the offense does, I'm not sure if that's the right approach here. So I'm just really interested to see how McVay chooses to go about navigating Seattle's defense. And I understand it seems easy, right? Like, just throw the ball. Seattle's given up, as you alluded to, the most yards in NFL history through 3 games. They're on pace to be the worst pass defense in the NFL by nearly 1,000 yards. So
that's pretty solid, by the way. When you put it in perspective, that's more than 3 games worth at 300 yards a pop, and I don't have to be a math wizard. So that's pretty impressive if they're able to accomplish that.
Yeah, and so, you say to yourself, like, hey, are we just going to ask Jared Goff to line up here and shotgun and say, go, read the defense, sling the ball around, throw it 60 times? It's not really his game. Goff is a quarterback that's assisted by play action and boot action, and right now Goff is using some sort of play fake element on roughly 40% of his throws. McVay's done a really great job manufacturing things and helping Goff. When Goff uses play action, his passer rating's 35 points higher, his yards per pass attempt 2 yards better. The biggest thing is it allows him to kind of survey only one part of the field most of the times, and that's big. And if you look at Goff, that seems to be where he's best in terms of making decisions also, because with play action, 6 touchdowns, 0 picks for Goff. But when McVay asks him to throw without play action, 7 touchdowns, 6 picks. So, I'm not sure of the approach here. And let me be candid, Todd. Like, there's some interesting matchups here, and I don't know if Ken Norton Jr., Seattle's defensive coordinator, is good enough. He's already been fired once by Pete Carroll. It's trending towards the second time. I don't think his game plans are overly smart or sophisticated, but you would hope that Norton flips on the tape of the Dolphins game and he applies some of those things. This would be a spot where Jamal Adams could have a field day, hanging around the line of scrimmage to help in run support, but also sending Adams on blitzes, right? Using Jamal Adams as an extra man coming down, which is going to force, I think, McVay to bring a wide receiver in to help block, which we saw against Miami. Having Jamal blitz to, effectively disrupt some of the boot action. And once that happens, then you force Goff into being a pocket passer. And I think that at least gives you a fighting chance. I know we talk about it a lot. It just amazes me every time I go look at like the updated data. Jared Goff right now, he doesn't like pressure, clearly, right? Now, the offensive line's done a good job helping him. He's only been pressured on 27% of his dropbacks. But a 36 passer rating with heat on, 38% completions, 2 touchdowns, 4 picks. If Jamal Adams is used properly, Todd, I think he can help blow up a game like this.
Well, you want to see him earn that paycheck, and we know that if he's left to do his own devices in coverage, he's not exactly going to pay dividends for Seattle and try and clean up things in the back end. We know that Seattle had a very lengthy injury report, at least on Wednesday's practice. You said that's to be expected, knowing that they played a game on the East Coast. So I'm curious to see if some of those guys at least become limited participants today and how they'll trend towards the weekend. Now, on the other side of the ball, Payne, for as deficient as Seattle has been defensively, the offense has been outstanding, averaging an NFL best 34.3 points per game, have not finished a season with the NFL's top-ranked scoring offense since 2005. They've scored 274 points so far this season, ranked top 10 among all teams through the first 8 games of a season since the 1970 merger. We know what Russell Wilson can do, but turnovers have started to become a problem. He's thrown 8 interceptions over the last couple of games, and you're seeing what we often do in the National Football League. For as good as you are in one element, if you don't have that complementary ground game, it puts a lot more pressure on your quarterback. So you're going to have drives that are tremendous, but you would like to lean on a running threat. No reason to believe that we're going to see Carlos Hyde side or Chris Carson in any capacity this weekend. If you're Seattle and you are one-dimensional, you have to imagine Aaron Donald is licking his chops and a chance to disrupt Russell Wilson Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, I would agree there. That's for sure. Games where, you have a really good unit on paper, but they haven't been tested all that much, always lead to, I think, a little more speculation and a little more projecting out and a little more guesswork, I would think. But, the new Rams defensive coordinator, Brandon Staley, has been a pleasant surprise. Nobody knew what to expect, I think, especially with changing schemes in an offseason like we've had. But the Rams defense has been damn good, 8th in defensive efficiency. But you start to pick each game one by one, and they haven't played a soul. The Rams have faced the easiest schedule of offenses. Bottom 5 schedule of both rushing and passing offenses. The Rams have literally faced one top 10 offense this season in Buffalo. They gave up 35 points in that game. Allowed 59% of plays to great successful. The other 7 offenses the Rams defense has played has an average offensive efficiency rank of 25. So I think, obviously, you're going to Seattle. They're probably a little pissed off the loss. They're the 4th most efficient offense in the NFL. I think this could be a little bit of a shock to the Rams system here. Brandon Staley, if you look at him, he's played a lot of quarters coverage this season. It really helps take the deep shot away and keep the ball in front. The Rams are really good at doing that, number 1 in explosive pass defense. So maybe Russ and the Seattle offense are forced to work a little bit here, move the ball efficiently down to down. You mentioned at the top, we'll have to keep tabs on Chris Carson in the mid-foot sprain. Pete Carroll said he is much closer to returning than Carlos Hyde, so Carlos Hyde to me is going to be out for this one. Carson, though, has been running off to the side early this week, which is a semi-positive sign. I don't think they're going to rush him back, but he's a tough guy. He always wants to get out there. Running off to the side early in the week is a big step to me, so we're going to have to really monitor that because it's important. And I think if you have a capable running back, it could decide this game because the Rams are a little softer against the run. They can be run on. They're about average in defensive rush efficiency. The Rams are also 1% below league average in overall defensive rushing success rate, despite facing the 5th easiest schedule of run offenses. If you look formationally, Seattle uses 3 wide sets on 66% of snaps. They do a really, really good job running from that formation. 55% success rate, 5.6 a carry when they trot out 3 wide receivers. It really just opens up and it makes things a little more wide open. The defense has to cover more space. And if you look, the Rams, on the other hand, allow 51% of runs to great successful against 3 wide sets. So I'm rarely making the case for running backs to be all that important or valuable in 2020, but I'm keeping an eye on Chris Carson and which backs here are going to play for Seattle. I know in terms of passing, I think everyone probably going to have their eyes glued to the DK Metcalf matchup potentially being shadowed by Jalen Ramsey. I think that's potentially speculation. Like Brandon Staley has really used a lot of the guys in that secondary to be versatile pieces. He's moved to guys, around a lot. Ramsey's played in the slot a bunch recently. If I had to guess, Ramsey probably isn't going to shadow Metcalf. Then again, you think, the size and the stature Ramsey might be the only guy that can actually stand a chance to cover him. I think probably the better approach is bracketing DK. I think that's your best bet, and then maybe let Ramsey work in the slot against Lockett. The way DK's playing right now, though, you're going to have to bracket him if it's not Jalen, because Metcalf is number 1 in the NFL in both yards and touchdowns when teams decide to single cover him, Todd. So there's a lot of ifs and ands and buts here that I'm not quite sure about. I went into this game thinking, hey, I'm going to find myself on the Rams. Still may, but I don't love the matchups as much as I initially did.
Well, and I think you hit on it towards the top. The spot would have set up a lot better if Seattle's coming into this off a win. This is a team that's been so resilient over the years with Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson that it's hard to expect them to play 2 uneven performances back-to-back, even if the Rams are the more rested team. I would also expect that with Aaron Donald bringing pressure up the middle, we could see Russell Wilson lean on his legs a little bit more. Didn't have the same characteristic rushing performance last week against Buffalo, but when you're talking about a team that was down 17-0 early on in the football game, probably didn't make the most sense to have him outside the pocket scrambling and risking life and limb in that kind of spot.
Yeah, makes complete sense. And I think I don't know what the prop numbers will open, but it's certainly something we've marked down to look at and assess.
So we shall take a gander there Sunday afternoon, leading into a Sunday night showdown, at least theoretically, a game that I don't know if we're all that excited to watch. Hey, but weird things have happened in primetime all season long, and this Sunday night, it's the Baltimore Ravens on the road against the New England Patriots. Baltimore, a 6.5-point favorite at FanDuel. You do have to lay a little bit of a price there. Market consensus more along the lines of 7. Total in this game, 43.5. And Payne, when we look at the Ravens, this is a team that's now won 5 games this season by 14 points or more, tied with the Chiefs for the most in the National Football League. They've scored 20 points in 31 straight regular season games, broke the NFL record. Streak began in Lamar Jackson's first career start way back in 2018. 4-0 on the road this season, one of 3 teams to be unblemished away from home alongside the Chiefs and Steelers. And when you look at how they've performed from an against the spread standpoint, the last 18 on the highway, Baltimore 13-5 against the number. Lamar has thrived in prime time as well. Meanwhile, New England entering uncharted territory, so to speak. They've not been this big of a home underdog since 2001 when they took on the Rams. That was actually Tom Brady's first season as a starting quarterback, but they have been good as a dog, 10-7 straight up, 12-5 against the spread in their last 17 as a dog. I give you all of that to ask you this. Do the Pats have one tactical advantage offensively where they can go out and attack this Baltimore Ravens defense that leads the league in scoring?
So let me be candid here. These are the games that I have a really difficult time with, where my guys and other sharp bettors like a side, but the matchup is god-awful, and I've typically just steered clear of games like these. We know Marlon Humphrey's back. We know the Ravens are a man coverage team. I'm not sure which New England receiver is going to consistently beat man coverage against good man coverage corners. And that's the problem I'm having with this game. And when you look at the Patriots' offense, they're 28th right now in passing efficiency. That's come against the 10th easiest schedule of opposing pass defenses. And I'm going to be extremely nice here because this is the best defense the Patriots have faced, but let's call Denver semi-comparable to Baltimore. New England hangs 12 in that game. The next best defense is San Francisco. They scored 6 in that game and then 10 against the Chiefs. Obviously, that's with Brian Hoyer. And I think a lot of people will be like, oh, this is going to be more of a ground and pound attack, and maybe that's the way New England decides to approach it, and with Calais Campbell likely sidelined, that might be the way you go about it. But the Ravens' run defense right now is number 1 in rush defense efficiency. So I'm not sure how that bodes well. The other thing we're seeing here, Todd, just a little bit is Cam, I thought, was good on Monday night. I know the announcers were crushing him. They were all over him, and I think he started that game 13-14. So I'm not quite sure why the announcers and some of the beat writers covering New England were bashing Cam. But to me, if you actually look at him, he's out there, he's like sweating bullets. He doesn't look overly comfortable yet. It doesn't look like he's got a ton of energy. He hasn't used his feet as much in recent weeks to the level of efficiency that he started the season with. And you start to wonder if he's not fully recovered yet energy-wise from COVID. So that's one thing that I think you have to factor in here a little bit. The other element to this game is, at least initially in the season and what we have seen to date so far, the way the Patriots like to pass the ball with Cam is using play action. 39% of Cam's throws this season have come with play action. If you break it down and get a little geeky with some of these really underlying metrics, the Ravens are the 3rd best pass defense against play action on early downs. So another check mark to this not being a good matchup. If you look, 47% success rate against the Ravens when using play action. Yards per pass attempt go down as well. EPA declines significantly. So that's where I'm struggling with this game to make a case for the Patriots, because offensively, I'm just not sure what they're going to be able to do. Maybe in a 60-minute sample size, they're going to win the line of scrimmage with Calais Campbell potentially being out, and they're going to be able to run the ball. And in that case, you might have a fighter's chance. But the metrics don't indicate that New England's going to be able to run. And they're probably not going to be able to win a lot of outside the numbers one-on-one matchups with their receivers. And the way they like to pass the ball is with play action, and Baltimore is very stingy against that. So again, matchup not the best on this side of the ball for New England.
No, it doesn't sound overly promising, even with the 7-point head start that's widely available. So let's see if the other side leaves you with a little bit more optimism to try and make a case for the Patriots as a live home underdog. And that, of course, is the Ravens offense against the Patriots defense. And when you look at Baltimore, Lamar Jackson, of course, grabbed all the headlines this week on the Rich Eisen show, more or less saying that, hey, look, every other opposing defense knows what we're going to run before we run it. And you wonder if that was the case in the first half against the Colts, where Baltimore was held to 55 yards. Suddenly, the light bulb goes on, things change in the second half, and the Ravens score 17 of their 24 points, the only 17 that they mustered from an offensive side. They employ a little bit more pace and tempo. In the third quarter, they run 32 plays to the Colts 4, but there's no ignoring the fact, Payne, that this Baltimore Ravens passing attack has really lacked pop. Less than 200 passing yards in 5 of the last 6 games. They're 31st in the league in that department. And while last year they could lean on the explosive ground game, I think the best way to describe what we've seen when they move the ball in the pedestrian variety is that it's blown hot and cold without those big explosive plays that we grew so accustomed to last year. But let's be honest here, the Patriots defense is a different animal in 2020 compared to where they were last year. Allowed 24 points or more in the last 3 games, and they're 24th against the run, allowing 140 plus per contest.
You're spot on. And we talked about this prior to the season about the players the Patriots defense lost via free agency, via opt-out. It was the single largest overhaul in the offseason in terms of value lost to the defensive side of the ball. And that's what we're starting to see now. They really miss some of these key cogs that are out. The depth, obviously, is an issue at this point as well. When you look at this matchup, and I know the offense for Baltimore hasn't been humming, and there's some question marks there, but this is a short week to prepare for this kind of offense. And you have to question whether New England's going to be able to stop the run. The other really good offense that could run the ball was San Francisco, and they gashed them. And New England right now in the season, 31st in defensive rush efficiency. So I believe that Baltimore is going to be able to run the ball a little bit better here than they have this season. And we've talked about why that's happening a little bit, right? You're seeing defensive ends strategically play a little bit wider. So it's forcing Lamar to either run outside wider or hand the ball off to a running back into the middle of the field where Marshall Yonda is no longer there. So that's why we've seen the ground game not be as effective this year. And, Lamar also hinted that teams seem to know what they're doing. I'm not sure that you would put that out into the universe right now, especially after the second half where it looked like Greg Roman changed some things. What needs to happen, though, and what Greg Roman needs to employ more, is having Lamar throw on first down. And I know a lot of people say, like, oh, you'll always say that. I say it because it actually works, and I continue to say it because people don't do it enough. And if you actually look at Lamar Jackson throwing on first down, he has been better this year doing it than last. It's the one area where he's been much better this year than last. And last year was an MVP season. So you need to do that more. The problem is Lamar's not throwing enough on first down. And he's asked to do something right now that we know he's not great at. And if you look, 46.5% of Lamar Jackson's pass attempts this season have come on non-first down pass attempts where the offense has needed 7 or more yards for a first down. Does that sound like where Lamar Jackson is going to be his best? And sure, we need him to improve as a passer. There's no doubt about that. But when you drafted him, you didn't have the mindset that Lamar was going to be the best second and long and third and long passer. And if you drafted him to be that, probably not the smartest move. Now, the interesting thing about this is, if you look at this matchup specifically, where the Patriots defense really struggles is short passes to receivers. And I think that probably bodes well and speaks to what I've been preaching here is if you can get the pass game going on first down, it doesn't need to be these like ginormous explosive shots. You can really throw the ball short to intermediate on this Patriots defense. Right now, NFL's worst pass defense against short passes to receivers in success rate, EPA, and yards per pass attempt. The other area where New England struggles mightily is defending play action passes. Lamar right now throws with play action 33% of the time. If you look at New England, they have allowed 67% of passes to grade successful against play action. That's dead last in the NFL. 10 yards per pass attempt, New England is allowing. And so when you look at Lamar again, he uses play action a ton, sixth most among quarterbacks with at least 100 dropbacks. He's going to have some success throwing the ball in this game with play action and throwing it short as well. I think the ground game gets going. Maybe I'm viewing this differently, but the matchups are absolutely horrific here, Todd.
Oh, that's the whole thing. I mean, you can look at it. We can say what we want about the number, but if New England can't find a way to get stops on defense or score offensively, it doesn't take a rocket scientist or a math wizard to sit there scratching their head going, not quite sure this is a ticket I want to have. And that's, what we talk about all the time, Payne. We know that there's a contrarian angle. There's a lot of approaches to be had, but there's 16 games typically every Sunday in the National Football League. And while we do our best to break down the biggest, knowing that our loyal listeners and audience wants to participate in those that are going to garner the most attention, sometimes you're just better served to sit it out from a betting perspective than to force a wager.
Yeah, without question. And that's the one advantage you have as a sports bettor, right? The book has to put a line on every game. You don't have to bet every game. And that's how you overcome the 4%. Exactly
right. I mean, we joke all the time that if you're in this to make money, it's a heck of a lot better going 1-0 every Sunday than it is going 2-2. If you're in it for action, we understand completely, and you treat it as a form of entertainment, but know how difficult it can be to outrun the 11-10 in the long haul. But you know what, Payne? We talk about it from the sports betting perspective. There's one man out there who lives it from the other side of the counter. He joins us every Thursday here on the Bet the Board podcast. You, of course, can follow John Sheeran on Twitter at JSheeran, SHEERAN1981. And John, we didn't talk to our listeners last week about your little weekend sojourn. Did you want to share where you happened to spend last Saturday and Sunday? And more importantly, was it a profitable endeavor for you?
You're backing me into the spot now. I was lucky enough to be at the Breeders' Cup on Friday and Saturday. Obviously, TVG, who broadcast the vast majority of the weekend, are a part of the Flutter group as well. So with my background in horse racing, I managed to twist enough arms to be able to get in the door. And it was an incredible experience to be at the Breeders' Cup with such a limited crowd in attendance, and to be as close as we were to the action was incredible. I'll plead the sixth on the fifth on your last question, and not answer that question. My wife might listen at some stage.
Well, if your wife listens, that's better, because my girlfriend, I don't think, has ever tuned into the podcast, no. And I'm not sure if any female family members for Payne have tuned in as well. But Payne, I could be wrong if your sister or mother have ever listened to our podcast.
It's very possible. Yeah, I think our female listenership is growing by leaps and bounds.
So it's jumped from one female listener to two over the last 2 to 3 years?
It's possible. It's possible. I mean, you are the Casanova, so I hear they just turn out in droves to hear your voice.
You know what? I saw you running for mayor in the lobby of a Miami hotel last Super Bowl weekend, so don't call me Casanova over here with your people skills, and we ultimately get you out of your cave.
Yeah, hey, it happens. It happens.
John, before we get into some of the football action this weekend, obviously the Masters started earlier this morning. How did betting handle look for this year's event taking place at such an unusual time on the sporting calendar? And were there a number of golfers that garnered early attention from either recreational bettors or professionals?
Yeah, amazing. The interest in the Masters this year. I mean, I've never seen numbers like this. FanDuel brand are already in excess of the handle that any of our other international brands have taken. So it's the first time that's ever happened in a golf tournament. Just incredible, given that we just recently in Tennessee had 8 states live for online betting. So God only knows where we end up in 5 years' time. But yeah, the handle was absolutely unprecedented. Our worst result is as easily predictable as you would imagine with Tiger. More bets on him than every other golfer in the field, bar Bryson. Obviously, the strong narrative into DeChambeau has been fully backed up. He's, in terms of handle, almost double every other golfer in the field, and he's our third worst as well. I can't really give you, I didn't look to see where the kind of sharper money was or what it was, but I might have a small little interest in Hideki Matsuyama. But yeah, really, really interesting, really solid. Obviously, we've had a small bit of a rain delay this morning, so hopefully we get up and running and have a great weekend. I think it is interesting, the first time it's going to clash with obviously football on a college football slate on a Saturday and NFL on a Sunday. So I guess that will have some impact on it, but overall, really, really positive.
I can tell you one thing, some of my broadcast partners and colleagues not too thrilled when Alabama LSU gets shut down because of COVID, knowing that the Masters would have provided the perfect Saturday lead-in. So I don't think FIU and FAU or Marshall versus Middle Tennessee State carries the same cachet. But Payne, imagine if you had spent the 3 months during lockdown drinking protein shakes, working on your spin rate. You could have been out there like Bryson, and we could have been talking you as the number one player in the field wearing a FanDuel hat out there on the first tee box at the Masters.
Golf is not my bag. I tried to get back in this off season, went to the range twice, and it's like I remember why I stopped playing. Very frustrating sport.
The windmill gets a little overwhelming for me to try and navigate through, so I think that's where I peaked on the putt-putt course back in the day when I was 9 or 10, and we tried to put together a somewhat competitive summer series of sorts. The neighborhood parents weren't all that thrilled about us clamoring to go every Friday or Saturday to get our round of 18. But of course, John, the Masters pales in comparison in terms of what we'll see on the gridiron for yet another busy NFL weekend. I know it's only Thursday morning and we have been off the board. Washington and Detroit, questions around Matthew Stafford. We know Big Ben dealing with a little bit of COVID protocol. But where are some of the games that you guys have seen early indications? And then I'll let Payne ask some of the hard-hitting questions.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of weight of money, undoubtedly in the Baltimore game, we've over 50,000 bets on the spread at -7 right now. Just 1,100 of those 50,000 are on the Patriots. So 96% of the money on both the money line and on the spread has been for Baltimore. Without any doubt, it'll be our most lopsided game of the weekend. And I think the public are honing in on a good spot. It feels to me at least like a pretty good matchup for Baltimore. So not surprising there. I think the total in that game has been interesting. We've seen some sharp money for the over there, 41 up to 43.5, and still seeing a ratio of 4-1 for the over in that game too.
John, when you look at the rest of the board, you have a lot of liability on Baltimore. You've seen some sharp money come in on the over there as well. Anything else that stands out to you in terms of a massive decision for the house, or any other sharp action that you've seen from some of the players that you respect the most?
Yeah, I think the Colts. So we're quite aggressive on that price move off the back of that. We were kind of favoring Indy on that in that game, and then took some sharp money on the money line of +104 and +1.5 on the spread. We've moved that to now making the Colts favorite, and I fully expect that to be the case come kickoff. So if there's any other operators out there that are offering you a bit of plus money, I would take that on the Colts. The other one that kind of is a bit surprising is that we took money on Carolina +6 from a really sharp customer. It hasn't really been reflected in the market, so we're only shading it slightly. In fact, most of the move that we've seen has gone the other way, but that's one that I would offer that still seems to be around at the +6 that you might be interested in.
I wanted to, Payne, you can jump into. I wanted to ask you about that Carolina game, John, and I'm glad you brought it up. I mean, Payne and I had a discussion trying to figure out exactly how the markets assess Tampa. We've seen money come in against them now for what, Payne, 3 straight weeks if we go back to the Monday Night Football game. And you try and figure out Carolina at this point, knowing that they took professional money last weekend against Kansas City. Has that been a team routinely that you're seeing get bet by professionals and looking like, hey, look, they want nothing to do with Tampa over the last couple of weeks, and the market not quite reaching an equilibrium of sorts?
Yeah, I think it's a fair assessment, Todd. I think the Panthers were probably a really difficult team to get a handle on early in the season. I think they've been really good compared to what we expected. Teddy Bridgewater, we saw him in New Orleans. What did he go? I think he went 4-1 against the spread when he filled in for Drew Brees last year. He's completely serviceable. And then there was the idea of Christian McCaffrey not being around. And to be honest, you barely know that he hasn't been there. Now we know we're going to miss him again this week again. But for me, the Panthers are just a really solid football team, a really good illustration of if you get the fundamentals in the game right and you have a serviceable quarterback, and that might actually be even a disservice to Bridgewater, you can compete with most teams in the league. And I think odds makers continue to make that mistake with Carolina. So for me, yeah, I think they're under the radar. I can see why we saw that sharp money that we did again this weekend for them. I doubt we'll see Tampa Bay as bad as they were last week in what is obviously a much easier matchup for them anyway. But yeah, Carolina, really good so far.
Payne, imagine if you could have bought stock in Joe Brady years ago when you started to bang the drum for him as the offensive mastermind in New Orleans before he turned into the legend that he's rapidly becoming, ultimately going to be a head coach either at a major college program next year or somewhere on the NFL sidelines.
It'll be interesting in this matchup because we saw earlier in the season, Carolina, Joe Brady were shut out in the first half of this game. And, I'm hearing John say that he took sharp money there. It hasn't seemed to have stuck at 4.5, 5. I actually saw a little bit of a differing view. And I think that mindset is Tampa's offense should be able to get the ground game going. And from there, it opens up the play action game. Carolina's defense at this point, we know has been a little bit disappointing. They haven't been the best defense when you go out and spend every single draft pick on defense. You know where the weakness is. So this is a tougher game for me in terms of a matchup compared to what it was last week against Kansas City.
John, one other game, I guess, that'll be near and dear to you guys that takes on a little bit of top prominence and top billing, especially on the East Coast, is the Eagles and Giants. We saw the Eagles open right around a field goal favorite. We've seen the total take a little bit of over money. Have you guys seen anything of note on that particular football game as the general public tries to figure out what we're going to get from Philadelphia going forward, ultimately realizing that this team might finally be healthy on the offensive side?
Yeah, I think that's the key to the game, like you say. I mean, they're just getting healthy at the right time. I haven't seen it. We've seen no real sharp money that I would call sharp, at least on the game. There's been a good spread on the spread itself, as in I'm getting a good book in there, not lopsided at all. I think the improvements that the Giants have made over the last few weeks, I've been actually really impressed with the Giants and the progress they're making. I like the coach. I watched one of his interviews about how they incorporated some new plays on all aspects of the game, both offensive, defensive, and on special teams. And I'm really impressed by what he does and the way that he has that team playing. A slight bias in the spread in terms of ratio, probably something in the realms of 52 to 48% in favor of the Giants. And that's pretty new this season. We didn't see a lot of money from New York through the first part of the year, but I think everybody's kind of falling for the same idea as I am, that, they're making steady progress. And, the Eagles, even though they get those players back, let's face it, have been somewhat disappointing in spots. We know they'll battle hard and play a tough game, but I don't know that there's the sort of team to blow anyone out, especially the Giants defense that have been pretty solid.
Payne, we did 3 deep dives on some of the biggest games on the board, but I feel we could go rapid fire with John and we'd have every game covered, much to the delight of our listeners. Wasn't sure if there were any other individual games you wanted to ask him about, maybe even Monday night, knowing we won't have a chance to talk to him closer to kickoff between the Bears and Vikings.
Yeah, there's nothing too glaring at this point, but I guess in terms of the Monday night game, Minnesota and Chicago, anything there that stands out to you? I've seen a little sharp money come in on Minnesota. Wasn't sure if that reflected what you've seen on your end as well.
Yeah, I haven't seen any sharp money for it, but I do get the feeling that line will swing towards them the closer we get. It really just does feel like a good matchup. Everybody's aware of Chicago's struggles offensively. And Minnesota with that ground game, obviously the way that Dalvin Cook has been playing, I'd be very, very surprised if we don't see a line move towards Minnesota between now and kickoff. Right now, it's about a 4-to-1 ratio in favor of the Vikings at 2.5. If I was betting that game, I'd probably bet it hard and bet it early on the Vikings.
Payne, John's not going to be invited back on the podcast if he sings more praise about Florida State players. I got to deal with enough of that bullshit on Wednesdays. I'm not sure I can handle it Thursday mornings, too.
Such a hater. Such a hater.
So, John, can't thank you enough for your time. We know you are a busy man with plenty of golf to keep you entertained and, of course, a busy NFL and college football slate. Best of luck to you and the boys behind the counter at FanDuel, and we'll look forward to getting you on same time again next week.
Appreciate it, guys. Have a good weekend.
Always great, Payne, to get John's perspective on things. Just not thrilled that he wasn't able to make a few dollars at the Breeders' Cup over the weekend.
Sounds like a fun time, though, regardless. A couple guys I know were trying to get out there. Apparently it was a good weekend, so hopefully he had some fun there. The ponies are tough. Ponies are tough.
You're a ponies guy. I mean, we know that Saturdays throughout racing season, we can see you rubbing elbows with that upper crust down there in South Florida Gulf Stream.
No, I leave that area to Hammer and Hank. That's his territory. That's his lay of the land. I'm not a big ponies guy. However, if I am going to bet them, it's at fixed odds, and there's probably some good information. But yeah, I'm not into the whole horse racing thing. My mind is so blown up from what we do here on a daily basis that I typically don't go to the track. And if I do, I try not to think too much about it. I'll get some information and that's how I will approach my day at the track.
It's definitely a tough racket to get into. There's no doubt about it. If you put the racing form in front of me and ask me to explain some of the specifics, I'm not going to help make anybody smarter. If anything, I'll make you dumber, and you'll wish you had those 10 minutes of your life back to try and contextualize things. But when you look at some of the games, I don't think, Payne, after we broke down the Patriots and Ravens game, it comes as any shock that the books are going to find themselves rooting for the Patriots in this spot, relying on a little bit of sharp money, hopefully number grabbing as much as anything else. Was just blown away, though, with 96% of the tickets and money as per John coming in.
I was trying to make
favorite.
a case for Bill Belichick, but the matchups are just so bad, so I'm probably going to find myself on the sideline here, but no doubt these are the standalone primetime games where books tend to do okay, but just a huge liability game for the house, it sounds like.
You know, and John already hit on this game. It's the final one that we have to break down. He said he's seen some sharp money on the road team, and that's what's driven Indianapolis into the 1-point favorite role at FanDuel. Total in the game, 48.5. As we get a rare Thursday night great football game with major division implications here. And when you look at the way things have gone, the Colts have actually fared pretty well against the Titans in recent matchups. The most recent meeting notwithstanding, the Colts have covered 3 of their last 4. The favorite has actually gotten you to the window 6 of the last 7 times. And a unique trend here that the Colts, under is 22-4 for Indianapolis when they come into a game after a double-digit loss at home, says they put a renewed sense of focus on trying to do things right on the defensive side. And I think that's the area we'll get to second. But when you look at these two teams, it's strength on strength there, but it's weakness on weakness here with the Colts offense against the Titans defense. And I guess the overarching question, Payne, is what is wrong with this Colts run offense? They've shown no semblance of continuity behind a fortress of an offensive line.
Probably a mix between offensive line and running backs, honestly. Colts offensive line, I think we all perceive it to be an elite unit. When you look at line yards, they're 25th in the NFL. So they're just not getting that push that you would expect from the names along that line. And we know earlier in the season, Todd, while a lot of the guys were not out, many of them were playing with some lingering injuries. But it doesn't seem to have rectified things. Now, if you look at other metrics, Indy's offensive line is 10th in run block win rate. So it is interesting, and it kind of insinuates the running backs haven't been good. It's really tough to pinpoint the issue, but I think across the board you can put blame on the offensive line not getting enough push and the running backs not being to the level we expected, especially with Jonathan Taylor. Now, fortunately, you get Tennessee tonight, right? They're really
The ultimate
there really
cure-all.
hasn't been an area defensively where the Titans have performed well. We know their struggles defending the pass, 25th in defensive pass efficiency. Adoree Jackson is still out for this game. Tennessee's been about average stopping the run. They have been horrific situationally, 32nd in third down success rate, 31st in red zone defense, so which is odd, right? You come from the Bill Belichick tree. It's all about bend but don't break. It's all about situational football. That just hasn't been the case for Vrabel and the Titans defense this season. You would think Rivers is going to be pretty comfortable tonight. Titans don't get a lot of pressure either, 25th in pressure rate. Clowney is going to try to give it a go, but he's dealing with a knee injury that I am hearing is likely going to require surgery in the offseason. So I don't know how Tennessee's going to fare here. I also don't know how dynamic the Colts offense is. And it just feels like, to your point, overall, I think for Indy's offense, they're searching for an identity. But the one thing that I would say is a positive for the Colts offense is it feels like they're fighting in their own weight class tonight. And if you look where Indy's truly struggled this season, it's against the 2 top 5 defenses they've faced. They have a 41% success rate against the 2 toughest defenses on the schedule. Any other defense on the schedule this season, the Colts move the ball pretty well, a 50% success rate across the board when you combine both the run and the pass. But against defenses that are, not named Chicago or Baltimore, those are the 2 top 5 defenses, the Colts actually have the second best passing success rate in the league when you remove those 2 games. So again, for me here on this side of the ball, it feels like the Colts are fighting in their own weight class here, and they should have some semblance of success tonight.
You would think, and the Colts will have their offense buoyed a bit with the return of T.Y. Hilton, who missed the game over the weekend. Of course, though, Jack Doyle won't be available in concussion protocol. But this isn't a knock on Jack Doyle. I'm just trying to figure out, Payne, when you look at Indianapolis and their tight end room, I mean, in the 5 games since Trey Burton returns, Mo Alley Cox has run just 41 routes, nothing compared to Burton's 100 and Doyle's 71. Why not get Mo Alley involved more than anything else? He's an absolute matchup nightmare in the middle of the field, especially when you get into the red zone.
So that's really where you want to focus, right? I think we've talked about this a little bit, that Trey Burton was Phillip Rivers' favorite target during camp. He just always seemed to be in the right spot. Where Phillip was looking, Trey Burton would be there. And so he's come back and they've allocated more snaps his way. Now, Mo Alley Cox was an absolute monster when Doyle was beat up and Trey Burton wasn't playing. And you alluded to this. He's an absolute matchup nightmare. He is also battling a little bit of an injury. He's questionable for tonight. I think he potentially battles through it, but that's partly why Trey Burton's seeing more reps, because of that rapport that he's shown with Phillip Rivers. And then Mo Alley Cox, despite his return the last couple games, he's still not 100% healthy.
Yeah, it makes some sense, and you'd hope that Phillip Rivers can develop a little bit more continuity with Michael Pittman, who we've seen factor more prominently, 4 catches on 7 targets for 56 yards versus the Ravens. A rookie, never easy to miss an entire month, but a guy that has the cerebral skill set he does, you'd hope can get on the same page. So we're curious to see how that plays out. I mean, you highlighted a lot of the issues that Titans are having defensively. There's no sugarcoating the fact they just can't get off the field on 3rd down. Now, they did generate a bit of a pass rush against the Bears, but we can talk about that.
4 offensive linemen out, right?
That had more to do with the Bears. Right, exactly. It had more to do with the... Wait, hey, hold on a second, though. We shouldn't discount that because the Bengals had no offensive line and the Titans couldn't register a sack. So at least they made progress in that regard for a week.
Very, very true.
On the other side of the ball, when you look at this Titans offense, they're become elite in the red zone, scoring touchdowns in 80% of their trips there, second best in the league. This is a team, though, that lives on the ground, and you talked about it earlier in the show. The Rams' play action is what makes that offense go. The problem for the Titans is their offense has struggled to establish that ground game. 2 out of the last 3 games, they failed to gain 100 rushing yards as a team. And when you look at Derrick Henry, we've seen his usage rates decline, slightly more than 50%. He's been on the field for the offensive snaps. And when you look at hitting rock bottom against the Bears, he's broken just 3 tackles in the last 3 games, didn't break a single tackle in 21 carries against the Bears. And in 5 out of 8 games this season, he's averaged less than 4 yards per carry. That becomes a problem, knowing that the Colts have been very good stopping the run. And when you look at second-level defense, that's actually where they've been at their absolute best.
You hate to simplify things and make it sound so, rudimentary or like you know more than the coaches. That's not it. But we do have an opportunity, Todd, to, kind of oversee what's going on with offenses and defenses and teams in general when you can dig into the metrics and the matchups. And I can tell you with 100% confidence that a lot of teams aren't actually evaluating things on a daily or weekly basis based on matchups, based on some of the metrics. But to me, what's going on with this offense and what tonight will boil down to a little bit here is, what is Arthur Smith going to do? You have a familiar division opponent on a short week. It's partly why you've seen this total come down from 50.5 to 48. Typically, we talk about offenses being a little more vanilla in these situations. The Titans can't be more vanilla than they already are. It's impossible. So that's what I'm interested to see. And I understand how Tennessee's built. I get what they want to do and who they want to be. But right now, some of the rushing struggles are coming because of predictability. Arthur Smith is too run heavy on first down. The Titans run 65% of the time on first downs in the first half. And I think we talked about this exact thing when Pittsburgh came to town, about how Arthur Smith had to break tendency and let Ryan Tannehill throw it more on early downs. It didn't happen. So it's probably not going to bode well if that's the approach again tonight, because if you look at the Colts defense, and you hit this perfectly, number 2 in defensive rush efficiency. Indy is also number 2 in the NFL, only allowing first down runs to grade successful at a 36% clip. Maybe that can change in a 1-game sample size, but you certainly wouldn't come into this game thinking that you're going to have a ton of success running it on first down. You would hope that Arthur Smith looks at film from last week, sees some of the adjustments that Greg Roman made at halftime, where Lamar goes 10 for 10 in the second half with 100% passing success rate, nearly 12 yards per pass attempt, and 20% of his throws were explosive, and employs some of those things here tonight. And if you're looking at this, only Baltimore and Cleveland have thrown less on first down than the Titans. And it's not like Ryan Tannehill can't do it. If you look, Tannehill's been successful on 57% of his first down throws. The Colts defense, as I mentioned, number 2 defending the run on first down, but they're 21st in passing success rate defense against first down throws. That should be the focus tonight. And to be honest, the first down throws really haven't required play action either. If you can believe it, we've always talked about this ground game, setting it up for Ryan Tannehill and the play action, making his job easier. But if you look, Tannehill's completion percentage right now, 8% better without play action. Passer rating is better. So Tannehill really hasn't needed the boost. 12 touchdowns, no interceptions when throwing without play action. So, I hate to simplify this, but if Arthur Smith breaks tendency tonight, Titans can win this game. If he doesn't, the Colts are going to win, and a lot of the sharp guys that have bet the Colts are going to win their bet. That's basically what this comes down to. And again, I hate to oversimplify it, but that's what has to happen here. Arthur Smith has to break tendency, or they're going to lose this game.
And it's interesting, Payne, because we talk about how you value skill position players all the time. It's one of the great struggles that every handicapper goes through, whether it's the NFL, college football, or a myriad of other sports that are out there. And we know what A.J. Brown brings to the table. I mean, he had a 40-yard catch that basically represented nearly a third of their total passing output against the Bears. But the Titans have been playing without Adam Humphries, and he has been a reliable slot guy. Jonnu Smith clearly not 100%, and you wonder, just because the Titans have some of these guys out there, what kind of impact it's having on their passing game, because over the last couple of weeks, it's been nothing to write home about. And while we talked about Ryan Tannehill putting together a 16-game sample size that would have had him as a truly elite quarterback, you did expect some regression, and it's really reared its ugly head over the last couple of weeks.
Spot on with everything you said. Jonnu Smith battling through a little bit of an injury. Humphries has been out. That's that reliable slot guy who you always know where he's going to be. We saw an uptick in the offense when he returned. He's going to be out tonight. The other thing to watch for here, and I'm not speculating, but I can tell you, A.J. Brown's knee is likely going to need some surgery in the offseason. They are basically managing this situation. He still looks like an absolute beast out there, and I think you hit this perfectly. He had 4 catches last week. If you remove the 4 catches from the offensive production, the other 51 plays where he didn't catch the ball, the Titans averaged 2.4 yards per play. And the one thing that's interesting is this is a short week game Thursday. If you look at how they've managed A.J. Brown's workload, Thursdays are his allocated day off. So I know a lot of people get nervous this year, like, oh my God, A.J. Brown didn't practice on Thursday because bet the board guys always say Thursday's a critical day. That's the schedule they've managed for him. So Wednesday's a limited day, Thursday's his day off to rest. Now you're playing a game on Thursday. Let's see what he looks like tonight. And I'm not saying he could be bad, but they've clearly devised this game plan for his load management, and now he's got a game on his typical day off. So let's see what that looks like for A.J. Brown tonight.
Yeah, and you mentioned that. I mean, always reported as a bone bruise, and it sounds, hey, it's not that big a deal. From what I've been told, this is the kind of thing that obviously lingers, and it's all players. One other thing on this game before we move on from it, Payne. Normally, I think both of us would kind of shy away from even trying to make a case for a team like the Colts coming off a physical game against a team in the Baltimore Ravens on a Sunday. But let's not kid ourselves. The Titans had to play a physical defense there, and I think those two factors wash out when you're trying to make a case for either backing the Titans or Indianapolis here.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Listen, I don't have a penny on this game. I know you dabbled a little bit earlier. I thought the Colts made a very good teaser leg. We're now past that point of no return here, it appears, with the Colts now the favorite. So for me, I don't have anything on this game. What I can say is before we started recording, another well-respected group did take the Colts at pick. So do with that what you will. But that's what I see on this game. And for me, nothing at this point, but that is what came through again this morning, even at the second number. Now, I know, again, through 0, not as impactful, but when you start to look at the strength of positions, you had your initial move on the Colts, and then there was another group that said, hey, we're fine still taking the second number here.
It's always interesting when you watch some of these games and how they'll ping pong around, and it seems that nearly every week the Titans have money taking a stance, especially when they have games listed right around a pick 'em. We'll see how this one ultimately plays out. 4 big games broken down as eloquently and elaborately as we possibly can around these parts. Encourage you to follow Payne on Twitter at Payne Insider. I'm Todd Furman. You can follow me there. Most importantly, follow the podcast at Bet the Board Pod. And of course, you can follow our Thursday guest, John Sheeran, at JSheeran, JSheeran1981 on social media as well. Payne, we do have one final portion of business to transact, though, before we shut things down for what has been a busy week around these parts. And that, of course, is identifying a best bet in the National Football
League. Let's go with rotation number 265, the Denver Broncos +5. And again, I'll be candid here. We made this game like 3.94. Typically, you would need 6 to get into the window here, but I think at 5, you have the point of value. But the bigger thing here is the health of the Denver Broncos. All signs point to them getting their lockdown corners, AJ Bouye and Bryce Callahan, back in this game. They played without him last week. Atlanta torched him through the air. Both those guys should be back, and I think inevitably when they're announced in, we're going to see this game come down a little bit. The other huge get back here is their offseason signing in Graham Glasnow was removed from the COVID list and should play. And I think that's a big get back here, especially when you're looking at a Raiders defense. Dead last, 32nd in the NFL in defensive rush efficiency. So I think Denver's going to be able to move the ball on the ground here, hopefully remove some pressure from Drew Lock's shoulders. It's vital that Denver gets out in a game like this. Now, they've struggled early on in games, but I think this situation, getting the ground game going, if you've read some of the comments this week, there's been some onus on getting out early in this game. The other area where Drew Lock has struggled this season is with pressure, a 32 passer rating under pressure. But at this point, the Raiders don't really get pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Below average in that regard on the season. They don't send a lot of blitzes either. Some of their metrics in terms of pressure rate got a big assist last week with Brian Bulaga down and some other guys from that offensive line that were missing as well in Trey Turner. So to me, I think the matchup is good. The spot is good. This is Denver season, right? You lose this game, you go to 3-6, your season's over. But if you can get back to 4-5, you're right in the thick of things in the division. Obviously, the Raiders are not throwing division games away, but you do have that little look ahead there to the old Kansas City Chiefs in prime time next week. The other thing that's interesting here is, let's say a worst case scenario, Todd, where Denver's sitting here down 7 or down 10 late in this game, or in the second half rather. The Raiders seem to go into a little bit of a shell. Extremely run heavy in the second half of games with a lead. So that's also a nice little chip to have in the back pocket. If the handicap doesn't go the way you initially anticipate it, you still have that chip in a chair type feeling here that Denver can get into the back door if it's needed.
Well, I mean, we'd prefer that if Denver had to sneak through, that they were down 10, though, not 7, Payne. So we could come charging through that back door, lose by a field goal, and get another 17-plus point fourth quarter outburst from the Denver Broncos. Hopefully, obviously, we're not going to need it.
That is the hope. I don't believe we'll need it.
The other thing, too, to keep in mind, and, as we poked around in this game, and Vegas has actually owned the Broncos. When you look at some of the point spreads lately, Vegas has covered each of the last 5 games against them. I think we were on the Broncos, I should say, in that Week 17 matchup. I can't even connect all the dots. This is the first time since Week 1 that the Raiders will be favorites in a football game. So we talk about role reversal playing a big role, and sometimes you get that collective sigh of relief. In this case, the Raiders going on the road, getting a big win against the Browns, following it up, withstanding that last-second incompletion from the Chargers. You wonder if it's human nature just to kind of have that collective sigh, and ultimately Denver comes sneaking through here. So Broncos plus, what was the official number that you gave out from a consensus standpoint? 5. 5 it is. Denver Broncos +5, your bet the board best bet. You have anything else you'd like to share with our listenership before they get a brief break from the dulcet tones that we provide for them?
Let's get out of Dodge, watch a little golf here, be on our merry way.
I gotta try and find it. I don't know if I have to stream it. I don't know if it's on Golf Channel. This stuff really drives me up a fucking wall, but that's a different discussion for a different day. For Payne Insider, I'm Todd Furman. Best of luck with all of your NFL Week 10 investments, and with the Denver Broncos ticket in hand come Sunday afternoon, we'll see you at the window.
Thanks for listening to Bet the Board. You can catch Todd and Payne every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday during football season, breaking down the biggest NFL and college football games. And to make sure you don't miss any free best bets, subscribe to Bet the Board on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.